by Helene Joubert, who was making a major move through the halfway mark. And now it was up to Pretoria's Joubert to try and carry South Africa's hopes and prevent an international victory. Valentina Leochova leading the way, Helene Joubert in second, Marta Vas from Hungary, Valentina Shatieva from Russia, followed by Sinet Bierkus of Westville. Tilda Till, last year's winner, amongst the top 10, but not making any impression on the leaderboard.
In the men's race, finally, two of the local pre-race favourites were charging towards the lead. Charles Matthias in the Fit 2000 colours, Thompson Magawana in the South African team. But behind them, Bruce Fordyce battled on way out of the contentions and out of the goals. But it was the character of the man that took him through finally to a top 20 place.
Meanwhile, Alberto Salazar, the world-class athlete that he was dominating the race from the front and holding off Magawana and Matthias.
After Camperdown, Theo Rafiri, second last year, made a charge through the field to grab a piece of the action and moved into joint second place. And with a surge that took him away from Matthias, he showed just what a classy athlete he is. And with him went Thompson Magawana, the two South Africans now chasing Salazar, who was a kilometre ahead of them up the road. And the question now was, could they make any impression on the American, who was travelling for him in all sorts of unknown territory?
And this certainly was no man's land for Salazar, who had never raced further than a standard marathon, being 42.2 kilometres.
One of the little hills out of Camperdown, nasty little hills on the second half of the up Comrades, but Salazar was equal to the challenge. Behind him, Rafiri chased hard, 5 minutes between the two of them, a long, long way in Comrades terms, especially towards the end of the race. Magawana a further 15 seconds back, and behind him, a tiring Charles Matthias hanging on to his gold medal position. And now it was down to Rafiri to carry South Africa's hopes in the gold medal standings. Big crowd at Camperdown welcomed Nick Bester, who, running with Gary Turner, was putting in a strong surge, challenging the top 5. And Nick Bester now on a roll, watching his pulse meter and pacing himself very well, chasing the tiring runners ahead of him. And who were they? Thompson Magawana now battling as they come up that hill out of Camperdown. Behind him, Gary Turner. But ahead, Salazar, workmanlike, up Polly Shorts. It was the last hurdle he had to face. It was the last challenge that he faced. He wasn't having any trouble from the runners. It was only the course and the heat that could possibly beat him now. And Polly Shorts was the scene of yet another desperate battle, this time for second place. Mshlala Mashloli wearing the blue cap, Peter Kammersund from Switzerland. These two had come from nowhere into the top 5. Behind them, Theo Rafiri and Nick Bester, chasing hard up the dreaded Polly Shorts hill.
And through the Dardanelles, it was the Russian who had reclaimed the lead from Helene Joubert, who temporarily had put her nose in front for a 15-kilometre stretch.
And the race was all the poorer for the departure of Frith van der Merwe, who pulled out well before the halfway mark, her injuries getting the better of her, and it certainly robbed the race of a lot of its interest. But towards the end, the ladies' race was to explode into action, but up front it was still Salazar who stayed ahead, ran tactically superbly, and was ever so happy to reach the finish. His first ultramarathon, his first run in South Africa, and a maiden victory. The novice crosses the line first, a very good time of just over 5 hours and 38 minutes. Just fine athlete, but speed-wise and tactics-wise, coming through when it mattered. Also coming through was Peter Kammersund from Switzerland. He had run last year but finished outside the goals. A mountain running expert from the Davos Marathon. And Theo Rafiri, clowning as usual for the crowd, a very happy man to finish in 4th place, the second of the South African team across the line. Rafiri, a very consistent performer now, consistently in the top 10.
And on Polly Shorts, it was Valentina Leochova from Russia who was still dominating this race. And although Frith van der Merwe had pulled out, Valentina Shatieva was now in second position. It was a great race. Leochova coming home in a time of 6 hours and 41 minutes and a bit of change. Second fastest up run in the heat.
A Hungarian and a Russian showing how well they can run. Leochova, the veteran of a 8-day race through Moroccan desert, kind of feature of this race today. Thousands upon thousands of people turned up to watch the 70th Comrades Marathon, and they were never disappointed. Out of the went to the hill, making hard and making up ground to get in touch with the second bunch. And Zamani in the lead was 2,000 meters, also looking for a win this year. Both Matthias and Mikkel John were looking very, very strong at the stage, but further back in the ladies' race, there was all sorts of drama.
And Trazen had led the ladies through the halfway mark, but it was Joanne Parrott, runner-up in the Two Oceans, who was in all sorts of trouble at the halfway stage.
That was the end of Parrott's race, and she was carried off at the halfway mark in Drummond. Very sad exit for one of the Cape Town hopefuls.
Further ahead, and Trazen was in all sorts of trouble. Having been passed by Maria Buck of Germany and Helene Joubert, she was now reduced to a walk. And former gold medalist Colin Goosen was on hand to try and help her and encourage her to get going once again. But the tears were flowing, the disappointment was there, and the stomach bug had had its final say.
And Trason was yet another victim, pulling out of the race just around the halfway mark. Couldn't make it. And the real battle amongst the men was taking shape. As the race developed, two men pulled clear, Charles Matthias and Sean Mikkeljohn. And with now 10 kilometers remaining, there was a huge gap between these two and the rest of the field. Third was Mishloli, then we had Volgan and Masongo, but all eyes were on the two of them. Would we have a sprint finish? These two were close together, less than 10 seconds separating them as they went up towards Tollgate and the finish. At this stage, Matthias was in the lead, Mikkeljohn chasing hard. Mikkeljohn had been the stronger of the two on all the hills. Matthias knew this, and he was desperate to stay ahead over those last 4 or 5 kilometers running into the finish. But it wasn't to be. Slowly but surely, Mikkeljohn reeled him in, and perhaps the man with a stronger mind and a greater will to win was heading for a victory. He caught Matthias at the top of Tollgate Hill, and he went past. And he went past with great certainty, determination, not a word passed between them. And very little now stood between Sean Mikkeljohn and his Comrades' victory.
Maria Buck heading for a comfortable victory in the women's race, well clear of Helene Joubert and the Russian Valentina Shatieva, world 100-kilometer champion.
Zero Lorio in fourth place, Debbie Hinton in fifth. It was the overseas whitewash that we expected. Not two either in the men, and the incredible crowd support down Pine Street at the finish, with Mikkeljohn getting away now, less than a minute still separating the first two, and a tremendous battle between these two as they headed for the Kingsmead cricket ground and the finish. Onto the grass he went, clutching message. Sean Mikkeljohn running in Mr. Price Club, receiving the accolades of 20,000 people, the first Natal since 1979. And at last a smile. Was it the victory, or was it his wife standing at the finish line, pregnant with a child? A happy day for the Johns, and a worthy winner, the time under 5 hours 35 minutes.
The closest finish in a year since the great days of Timmy Malone and Marnie Kroon. Just 59 seconds separating Charles Matthias and Sean Mikkeljohn. A great run by both of these two fantastic athletes.
Charles Matthias even managing a sprint at the finish, and it was such a pity that both couldn't win. They'd given their all, they'd given their best. Mikkeljohn Matthias, third was Volgan at the finish. Slowly picked up fourth. Gary Turner moved through to pick up the first place, 5:42. We had Song, Linda Matlala Bester, and Thea Ferry making out 10th gold.
Maria Buck on her way to a fantastic by some 20. An emphatic victory for the 36-year-old Buck. The best performance in the Comrades amongst the ladies since the heyday of Frith van der Merwe. Other fine performances by Helene Joubert, Valentina Shatieva in third, and Sinette Bierkus in fourth.
Sean Mikkeljohn was the first KwaZulu-Natal victor since 1979 and was greeted with the euphoria by an elated home crowd. Pre-race women's favourite, American Ann Trason, had unfortunately to retire with a stomach bug. Germany's Maria Buck emerged victorious. Here's Ian Laxton with the details of the 1996 uprun.
From all over the subcontinent they come, South Africa, Zimbabwe, also lots of overseas runners, Europe, Australia, South America, a truly international field and a stellar one. Many of these top runners choosing to miss the world 100k champs the Mayor of Durban, friendly wave to the crowd. Lots of excitement and that's tremendous tradition. It's full of traditions. The code traditionally sets them on the way. This time recorded. Tremont sadly no longer with the Comrades marathon. Fine wave on the marathon. The gun sets them on their long journey, 87 kilometers. A very, very tough task ahead of them. Many, many hills, making this one of the hardest races in the world. Certainly the toughest for a mass participation event such as this.
12 degrees to 24 degrees, pretty overcast with a 25 knot southwesterly.
Ideal conditions, no doubt, helping the runners to a quick time, and they'll all be enjoying it out there. So often in Natal, which is a subtropical area, it gets very, very hot and humid. We've had some terribly hot Comrades over the years. The races run a little bit later this year, so it is darker for longer, but up Cowie's Hill they go. As usual, the ambitious runners go out early and hard. More favoured runners back in the pack.
The first real test, Cowie's Hill, and Isaac Malekwe leading the male field 6.5 minutes ahead of America's and Trazen.
Trazen comes into the race with a big, very big pedigree, world record holder over 100 kilometres, and she goes out very, very fast. Not too far behind the first man. There's Anne Trason. Picture dead set on breaking Frith Agliotti's up record of 6 hours and 32 minutes for the 87 kilometres. Takes the race by the scruff of the neck. She ran it last year, went out hard, but had to bail round about halfway with stomach problems. Doesn't want to make the same mistake this year.
Christopher Parks from Great Britain trying to emulate three of his countrymen who won this race before, and Isaac Malekwe from Nedmester. They've gone out very early, and possibly a case of fly now, pay later.
Course record holder for the women in both the up run and the down run. Frith van der Merwe beforehand, now Frith Agliotti takes the pace in the women's field, trying to do it yet again. Both course record holders together. Bruce Fordyce there with a V on his chest, now a veteran, over 40 years of age, the holder of both the up and down records for the men's race. And Fordyce back in the women's field, not competitive at the top level anymore. And he waves goodbye. Ahead of them up the road, Maria Buck from Germany, defending champion from last year, running second now in the ladies' race.
Maria Buck ran tremendously well last year to win on her debut, and looking particularly strong, just a few minutes or so behind the American Anne Trason, and certainly a stellar international field. Meanwhile, Chris Parks of Great Britain heads through the halfway mark in a time of 2 hours and 38 minutes, and that perhaps the course record for the uprun.
A very fast start by Parks, and at this stage he has a very big lead over the rest of the field. And of course the question is, has he gone out too quickly? Looking very comfortable, goes through the halfway. There you see the time, 2 hours 38, beating the previous best time by 6 minutes. And that was Salazar's time 2 years ago when he ended up winning the race.
And the main bunch behind, Valmir Nunch, Charles Matthias second last year, Dmitry Grishin, Alexei Volgin. Great competitors in this bunch. And Valmir Nunch, the 1995 World 100-kilometer champion, leads them through in a time of 2 hours and 45 minutes.
And these people are now a long way behind the leader, Christopher Parks, who's going like a steam train ahead of them up the big hill, and also going like a steam train up that hill in Shonga. And Trazen, the leader in the women's race at this stage, 4.5 minutes ahead of Maria Buck. The women spread out. In third place, South Africa's hot pot favourite, Hélène Joubert, 4 minutes behind Buck, followed by Joanne Parrott and the other Russian, first Russian, Valentina Shatieva. And that is Shatieva going through the halfway mark.
Shatieva, the world 100-kilometer champion and second in the uprun 2 years ago, is running a very cautious race in the early stages.
And it's now the hunting pack. Nick Bester on the right, Charles Matthias with him, and the two Russians, Grishin and Volgin, chasing down Parks. Parks went out very, very quickly and pays the price as they go up towards Cato Ridge, and Parks on the side of the road, running out of steam and carbohydrate and energy, and lets the other four steam through. Nick Bester setting the pace as they run through the Camperdown area on the second half of this race, get some information. And all these four runners looking very, very strong at the stage. Matthias, Grishin, Volgin, Bester, and Kikai now in the fifth position.
The top three men, Charles Matthias, Nick Bester, Dmitry Grishin, and Charles Matthias and Dmitry Grishin have broken away from Nick Bester with 11 kilometers to go. They're on little pollies, and they're into the final stages of the Comrades Marathon 1996. Dimitri Grishin, a very fast 10-kilometer runner, 29:40 is his PB, and of course Dimitri Grishin finished second in the Two Oceans just over 2 months ago.
Ahead of them, though, the dreaded Polly Short's Hill, a really tough climb, and at this stage Grishin looks the stronger of the two of them on the uphills. Charles Matthias has done everything but win the Comrades Marathon. The 1 year he crossed the line first, he was disqualified for an illegal substance, and he would dearly love to win this race. So too would Anne Trayson after her wretched run last year, and at this stage it certainly looks like she's going to achieve that. Out at the Dardanelles point now, 16 k's from the finish. Trayson way ahead of the rest of the women's field. And going towards Polly Short's, the very testing uphill right at the end of the race, normally where the men are separated from the boys, and so often it happens that this is where the race is won or lost. Just over 5 hours and 1 minute now, chasing a time of 5.5 hours. Grishin has gone through, Bester now is in second, and Matthias has dropped back to third place. Grishin gritting his teeth, hanging on, the finish almost now within sight.
And Dimitri Grishin of Russia is within the final mile of the Comrades Marathon. With 5 kilometers remaining, it was Grishin, Bester, Volgan had taken over from Matthias, and Sean Meiklejohn, the champion of 1995, is moving through into 5th place. But Grishin has not got far to go now in the Comrades Marathon, 5 hours 23.5 minutes, and he's looking for a time of under 5.5 hours. Nick Bester chasing for all he's worth over the final kilometers, but it looks like his surge is once again going to be too late as Grishin enters the stadium at Jan Smuts.
Undoubtedly the highest standard ever in an up Comrades run, although the record of Bruce Fordyce remains intact. That is 5 hours and 27 minutes. Grishin has already gone past that time, but looking for under 5.5 hours. The quality of the top 10 quite outstanding as Nick Bester chases and chases yet again, but he won't be there because Dimitri Grishin, at his first attempt at the Comrades Marathon, wins in a time of under 5.5 hours. And finally the emotion comes through. He can savor one of the highlights of his athletic career.
Grishin made his debut in the 1995 World 100-kilometer Championships, finishing 5th, and he's certainly an ultra-marathon runner to contend with in years to come.
Barry Barty there, the chairman of the CMA, welcomes him home. The Russians came, they saw, and they certainly conquered. Nick Bester in second place. And there's Frank Mdrolozi, the premier of KwaZulu-Natal. A spirited finishing charge by Nick Bester. He has won this race before, and he's run today at absolutely outstanding time, 5 hours and 30 minutes. And who would have thought that running 5.5 hours would only give you second place? But he was up against a superior athlete who outthought him and outran him on the day.
Alexei Volgan, also of Russia, comes in for his second consecutive third position. The rolling windmill arm showing that he had plenty in reserve, and very pleased with his performance.
Outstanding run, so the Russians get 1 and 3. Sandwich between them, Nick Bester carrying the flag for South Africa. Volgan, a terrific run. And there he embraces comrades in arms, literally trained together in the Himalayas. And here they do 1 and 3. And all that work really was worthwhile. It's bearish thought though for Charles Matthias, 4th place, and he lost a bit of will towards the end. For him it was either win or nothing. A great run though, wonderful time, betting the kind of time he was aiming for. And in 5th place, defending champion Sean Meiklejohn, perhaps more at home on the down run. There we have it, Grishin under 5.5 hours. Bester, Volgan, Matthias and Meiklejohn all under 5:40. Splendid running there. 3 South Africans and 2 Russians. But a very happy person today, all the way from America, and at last a smile for the crowds. And Trayson comes home, heading for a wonderful new up-course record, smashing Fritz van der Merwe's old mark. It was 6:32, 6 hours 32 minutes. It's now 6 hours and 13 minutes and a couple of seconds. What a wonderful run she's had. Second place, Maria Buck, looking a lot more comfortable. She'll be delighted with her time of 6 hours and 24 minutes and a few seconds, also beating the old up record. So it was first last year for the German and now second this time. And no doubt she'll be back trying to recapture that title and emulate her victory of last year. Third place, Valentina Shatieva, the Russians making their presence felt. But the class act today, Anne Trayson, smashing the up record, 6:14.12. A solid 10 minutes ahead of Maria Buck. Shatieva coming in under the old record.
Grishin and novice from the Ukraine. The American Traisen eclipsed Frith Agliotti, nay van der Merwe's uprun record, by 19 minutes. Charles Mateos, the snowman, was determined to make the Comrades his own. Let's review last year's highlights with our commentary team.
And the race started by the mayor of Pietermaritzburg. Perfect conditions, 6 degrees at the start, which was quite warm for Pietermaritzburg at this time of the year. Ideal conditions throughout the day, windless, and later on dry with bright sunshine.
And just under 14,000 runners, amongst them 203 from overseas. And the battle lines were drawn. Would it be a South African victory or an overseas victory this year? But for the many thousands of runners behind those seeded runners up front, it was a day of excitement, of pain, fatigue, drama, and ultimately great, great triumph. Lovely, lovely morning. The sponsors light ship up over the Valley of 1,000 Hills and low cloud in the early morning. Perfect conditions for the runners. And soon a lead group formed. A couple of the faster runners went out quickly, but the real contenders were always in there. Charles Mateos in the green and blue in the middle of the picture.
Dmitry Grishin was there, Alexei Volgin was there, as were many of the other contenders. And a feature of the early part of this race was how the major names got together and watched each other. Trayson and Maria Buck were watching each other as well. The two main contenders in the ladies' race went straight out and were keying off each other, with Valentina Liakova following them as well.
In the Mr. Price colours up front, Maria Buck, defending champion, and the defending champion of last year on the uprun, Dmitry Grishin of Russia. And a lot of pressure on him. He didn't have a great Two Oceans marathon earlier this year. He went back to Kazakhstan to train, and he was back. The defending downrun champion, Sean Mickeljohn of South Africa, really looked comfortable early on and was hoping to come through towards the end, as is his wont. But the competition very, very strong. Runners from South Africa and from overseas, but the conditions quite excellent early on.
And the pace fast, but not suicidal. And we realized as soon as we saw that we would have a very, very exciting race. Everybody running steadily, but nobody prepared to risk everything with a mad gamble in the first half.
And the favourites very often hanging back, but two of them in that lead group, Charles Mateos in the front there, the tall figure of Russian Dmitry Grishin, both running in the Rentmeester Reparol gel colours, blue and green, and they'd laid their cards squarely on the table. They were the men to beat today.
A few kilometers behind them, the leading ladies, Maria Buck suddenly surging and deciding to go ahead and pull ahead of her main contender, her main rival, Anne Trayson. And so the gauntlet was thrown down, and we had a thrilling race brewing in the ladies' race as well.
Maria Buck, who won it 2 years ago on the last down run, started out very, very strongly, and the spectators were on the ground and also up in the sky. But that top five now developing on the big run out of Drummond up towards Bothas Hill.
And as they pulled their way up towards Bothas Hill, up the steep hills there, Nick Bester decided to make a move, but behind him Grishin, Mateos, and last year's 10th placer Donovan Wright also hanging back and waiting.
Well, Nick Bester is very, very aggressive front runner, and he took the race by the scruff of the neck, as did Maria Buck, coming through halfway, and the leading woman not far behind the men, and the German now on an absolute roll, running very strongly, and having dropped Anne Trayson, the defending champion, quite a way back at this stage. Strong running there by the German. Her husband, Kazimierz Buck, also in the top 20, so the pair of them having a great day.
And Anne Trayson coming through halfway, looking good, but hanging back, a slight shadow over her chances because of the fact that she'd had major surgery earlier on an injury, and she was biding her time and seeing how the injury would go.
Anne Trayson, a remarkable woman athlete, holder of the world record for 100 kilometers, winner of many an ultramarathon, particularly trail races. She's very popular in the United States. Still the foreign juggernaut keeping going, but amongst the men up front, the lead was changing over and over again. This time Nick Bester now coming over the top of Bothas Hill down towards Hillcrest, and with him the